that has been called by the PSL chairman, Dr. Irvin Khoza. I'd also like to welcome the viewers as well as the media that are joining us on the PSL channel on the SuperSport bouquet. Let me also acknowledge the presence of the PSL acting CEO, Ms. Mato Madlala. And with that being said, without wasting any further time, let me hand over to the Premier Soccer League Chairman, Dr. Irvin Khoza, for his address. Chairman.
Good afternoon to members of the media and all the people watching at home on the live broadcast. It's important for me to acknowledge that I've been reminded that today we're playing against France, and I thought I must share a story with the media before I start. We had a very important game against France in Lille, which was the time we were readmitted, in the FIFA family. I took a journey to make these friendly games. We just played England, which was unique at the time that a team from the continent can play the national team of England in England. But the game was scheduled to play in Manchester. I won't talk about the incident that happened in Manchester. I want to talk about the incident that happened in France. Just the night before the game, there were issues between administration and the players. Now, those issues were pertaining to issues of bonuses. And I happened to be the head of delegation. And I was called into a meeting that there are issues that they want to address. And I since reminded them that I cannot discuss those issues because those issues were discussed when we left home. But they were persisting in terms of engaging on this matter. I took leave and I went to speak to the president of the association. And in the consultation we had, because it was an experience we experienced, in the game against England, we consulted and checked, where is our under-23 team. It happened that the under-23 team was playing in Norway, but they were now in transit, in Frankfurt. We asked them to redirect and come back, to France. In the evening, I remember my room was opposite Shusmusheo's room. It was always open. His room was always open. We had to chat because they're all from Alexander Township. So when the under-23 came with their bags, he barged into my room. Chairman, what's going on now? I said, no, they are coming in just in case. The rest is history. It didn't happen. It was a historical, occasion playing against France. But more importantly, for a player like Tony McCarthy, you play in the same team in under-20 against Thierry Henry, was going to feature in that friendly game on that day. So it was unique and it's very special. On that note, I want to wish Bafana Fana well, that we've been there before when it was not fashionable. It was historic. We play all the countries, of North Europe that mattered. In Europe, some of them came here in South Africa after our readmission to the family of FIFA. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long, long wait for all of us in football, especially among the supporters, spectators, stakeholders, the media, broadcasters, and everybody. Now, on the 22nd of March 2022, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Home Affairs, issued amended regulations in terms of Disaster Management Act 2002, which were released on the 23rd of March. These amended regulations permit the return of spectators to sporting events subject to certain limitations. And that is why when we met as an executive committee yesterday, we had to make sure we understand what are those limitations, to make sure that we comply with the requirements in terms of whatever regulation is effective at this point in time. In addition to the amended regulations, sport bodies must still meet the legal obligation imposed upon them by the Safety and Sport Recreation Act of 2010 in context of the changed regulatory framework. The Executive Committee of the League met yesterday and today to consider the amended regulations of how best to implement them urgently, safely, and responsibly, having regard to the need to put in place the measures required about the amended regulations, and more importantly, the SASRIA requirements. The amended regulations permit spectators to return to professional football, which is subject, firstly, the use of only 50% of the stadium capacity. Those permitted entry providing a valid vaccination certificate or negative test, which must have been obtained more than 72 hours, or not more than 72 hours. Strict adherence to health protocols and social distancing measures, which I'm told now is about 1 meter. To allow for return of spectators on this basis, it will be necessary to make an urgent application to categorize or recategorize upcoming matches in accordance with the SASRIA Act, and having regard to such approvals as secured from Commissioner of South African Police Service, submit amended plans to the Event Safety and Security Planning Committee and the League National Safety Officer. Now, all these requirements are important, and that is why people are saying when the announcement was made, why we did not start admitting spectators into the stadium. The situation is different. As I speak to you now, the games that are taking place this weekend, the games taking place next weekend, all those games have been categorized. They've been categorized, already there are plans in place that have been approved. Now, if this new announcement came, it changes the complexion of the requirement. One of the things that we are advising our member clubs is that all categorization that are made must be asking for medium risk categorization, because that in itself gives you the full VOC to assist you in the management of the event. But also you've got the SSPC meeting taking place 1 week before the match with all stakeholders involved in planning for that event. Now, with what is uncertainty now is the question of the compliance and the response that you're going to be getting on the date to be announced. When are we starting with the events to take place? The Executive Committee formulated today guidelines setting out the steps to be taken and stressing the importance of compliance. These guidelines will assist member clubs to permit the return of spectators to professional football matches in a responsible and, most importantly, safe fashion. Having regard to the matters that must be attended to ensure lawful and safe return of spectators, the League has earmarked the Nedbank quarter-final matches of the 8th and 9th of April as the first matches that will be open to spectators. Standing here in front of you, it will be difficult for us to start this weekend. As I've indicated, that most of those matches already have been categorized and approved. Now, next week, also those matches were categorized. We're asking that they must be recategorized to make sure that they are compliant in terms of the requirements. I must emphasize that the issue of vaccinated and proof and your ID is very important for supporters when they come to those matches. Upon purchasing your ticket, you'll be required to show your ID and your vaccination. I must encourage that it's very important that we encourage our supporters to vaccinate when they want to come to matches, because we are first thing to have 100% return of spectators to all our matches. Very important also that our supporters must understand that we value their support for all these years. That's why we had to take these precautionary measures to make sure that we comply to the full in terms of the requirement, because if we don't comply, when things are normal, nothing happens. If an incident happens, when you go in front of a judge, he does not understand the mood, the sentiment, your feelings, what is in the regulations, what is in the Safety Act Did you comply in the Safe and Sasria Act? Did you comply or not comply? So all those things are very important to make sure that we take into account the welfare of our supporters at heart and protect them, and also protect our stakeholders, because there's reputational management of the sponsors, SAFA, FIFA, CAF, and all the stakeholders that are impacted by any incident happening in football. So therefore, it's very important for the safety of the supporters to make sure that in case something happens, maybe there are issues of liabilities in terms of the insurance cover must not have an excuse of not paying because we failed to comply. Important also for the media, we can now submit after this press conference for accreditations. You can apply for your accreditations for attending matches as announced today, that all matches from the 8th and 9th will allow the media to those venues. Up to this point, it's going to be very important that, as the league, as we finish now, we are sending to the clubs the concept document of a return of spectators so that they must be able to know, because the issue of categorization is not done by the league. The league only gets responsible, for the cup competitions. But for the clubs, they are responsible for those kind of recategorization of those matches. So lead time is required for them to be able to do that necessary kind of interaction with the commissioner of police or in charge of the categorization of matches. But more importantly, it's also very important that we give the responsibility to the clubs, because there's a lot of meetings that must take place in between matches, especially if the matches are medium risk. That's why, because of anticipated enthusiasm of the return of supporters, we must make sure also on the issues of compliance in terms of the issues of the validation, checking of the IDs and the vaccination certificate. And we have agreed as a league for now that the checking will be visual checking, because at the moment the issue of technology might be a bit of a problem. That's why we're asking the supporters, please carry your ID and your vaccination in your hand. And maybe I might encourage the health department that maybe going forward, once we're in this phase, if it's possible that you allow your personnel to be next to the stadiums in case those that want to vaccinate, they can vaccinate, because now we are at arm's length, because some of them are working, they don't have time, they've got time constraints, so nobody must be disadvantaged on this most important, the opening of the stadiums to all our supporters in the country at large. That's enough for me, Mr. Fatwani.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I will take questions from the floor. Let me just start with the journalists that are here. Do I see a hand? Tshepo Thibane from ENCA.
But how do you allow Tshepo, because there's a special lady here from the same company.
She didn't raise it.
Tshepo monopolizes the platform every time he's the first one to come.
Mic on there. Can you just help him with the mic?
Hello? Thank you. Yeah, it's the excitement. So, Chair, in terms of the fans that are going to be coming into the stadium, I need clarity, is it only those who are vaccinated? Only? Because I think this is important so that everyone gets the message.
When you run a business, there are license conditions. If I read the regulations of data management, regulations are saying everybody in that stadium, media included, officials included, must be vaccinated or have a PCR. So not more than 2 hours to the time of the match. It's not me saying it. It's the condition of allowing us into the stadium. That's why we encourage people to do the necessary thing and make it easy. Hence the time we took in terms of how to assist the clubs to deal with the issues of layers that might be put in place to make it easy that there must be no unnecessary congestion when they come to the stadium. It's not us speaking, it's the license conditions.
Thank you, Tshepo, and thank you, Chairman. We'll move on to other questions. We've got Newsroom Africa and SABC in the house. Do you guys have any questions, or can I go to the people that are at home? It seems like they are covered, Chairman. Question from Daily Sun, Thokozisi Mkhonza. His question is basically with regards to the Glad Africa Championship and the Diski Challenge, as to whether this also applies, to those divisions, as well as his second part of his question is asking, since Diski Challenge entry fee, there's no entry fee, the tickets are free, how will that work out?
All matches under the auspices of the NSL/PSL must comply with the regulations. All competitions, everyone must comply. For those that are going to be coming also to the matches in the Diski, they also must comply with the vaccination certificate and the ID. No exceptions.
All right, seems like this is going to be a very short question. The other question was similar to Tshepo's one about vaccination. Unless if we've got other questions, I'm going to be forced to close the session here. There's nothing else
Before
online.
we close,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to pick the lady in red. He made a very interesting comment when I was listening his interview as we were coming into the venue. Madam, we can't reduce the prices. We are just 14 rands. Being 14 rands, what we get out of that as a PSL clubs is less than 7 rands. Just to stage an event and comply to the statutory requirements, you need 200,000 rands. At a sporting code, they charge 100 and something, 200 and something, 200, they can afford to reduce the prices. We've been consistent of understanding that the people that are supporting us are not well endowed with resources. So that's why we must try to keep the price at the level where they can afford. With all the challenges, it's worse what is happening now in the country in terms of how much the cost of the petrol is going to be, all other costs that goes with it. We have kept it at the level that is going to be afforded at the expense of the clubs sometimes. That's why I salute some of the clubs, or most of the clubs, for the sacrifice they are making. We don't talk about what it takes to stage an event. What money do you have to spend to comply? So as we speak now, we are imposing other conditions in terms of compliance with extra costs. The question, where is it coming from? For the last 2-3 years, they have not had any income coming in. But also all that is in the spirit of the game of fair play. I've provoked the lady now.
Okay, can we just give her the microphone? That's Tumi Khaswi from...
Tumi Khaswi from Newsroom Africa. Chair, thank you very much for raising that one. Just to follow on it then, I mean, a lot of people are saying usually the teams that has a lot of fans, it's Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates. But from the PSL side of things, do you guys have strategies or talk about strategies in terms of trying to get more fans to return to the stadiums or to attend games?
Well, you can talk about it now because at the moment you are dealing with the pandemic. Psychologically, we need to do that adjustment for people to come to normal life. Everybody is not sure what's happening in life. There are issues happening overseas, there are issues happening at home, issues of unemployment, retrenchment. Let's deal with that part. That part is going to come when things are normal. But deal with the abnormal situation at the point in time in terms of making sure that we give them some kind of sanctuary to come and relax and chill. Because football is a big hospital. It gives you that therapy that no one can give you. So therefore we try to create that environment for the therapy. Other issues we'll deal with them, because there's an everlasting question that we are asking, which is relevant. The next press conference, when things are back to normal, I'm going to give you an answer, which I've been giving all along, to make sure that it assists in terms of the interrogation of this match. But I'm asking the supporters who are privileged to come to the matches, please vaccinate. But I'm challenging the health department that whilst they are asking us to vaccinate, because sometimes it's not easy for us coming to the matches because of the work situation. If you can put stores next to the stadiums to make sure those that maybe forgot to vaccinate, you can vaccinate and come into the match and make sure and enjoy the game of passion that they love. Because sometimes because of convenience and physical distance of work employment situation, it's difficult for them. But for football, they sacrifice to come to the matches. So that I can encourage at this point in time. Thank you very much.
Chairman, it seems like most of them were still typing. Do you have time for just a few from the online questions? Yeah, I've also noted Tshepo for a follow-up, but I'll start with the online ones. Kanyiso Tswaku from Sports 24. He asks here, Chairman, how will the PSL monitor the authenticity of the vaccination certificates? And he's also just looking for clarity about the categorization, whether it's done for match by match or do the clubs do them for the whole season? A similar question also came from Matthew Marcus from The Independent.
The normal requirement for categorization, you do it, in advance. But, when the situation, changes, and you assess the threat, the risk that is anticipated, you resubmit the categorization to make sure that you are compliant. And also, if there's a requirement of beefing up security plan or security deployment, more importantly, scarce resources are not available in the market. Public order policing, you require the categorization to be monitored at all levels of the game. So it's other question also?
The authenticity of vaccination certificates.
Well, that's why I was saying, because it was a test that was done to make it easier to avoid congestion, because our football supporters, we know, they come 10 minutes before the game starts. So the layers are going to assist us in terms of visual checking, your ID and your vaccination. It's going to be a better way of doing it quicker and efficiently for us.
Okay, another one from Temba Shabalala from Josie FM. He's just asking about the financial impact that, without the supporters in the past 2 years for the PSL and the clubs.
That's why I don't understand how the club owners are surviving up to this point. And that's why it's important to do things in a proper way, that the sponsors that we have, they remain on board, because it's been very difficult. Even when things were normal, it was difficult for clubs to be able to pull through some of the requirements, because the league is competitive. It requires a lot of deployment of resources that you don't have at the expense of your families. Some of the clubs are not sponsored, but they've been complying and complying and complying. We build a product, we build a brand, all because of the sacrifices. And that's why my head goes to them, my heart goes to the club chairman of all the 32 clubs for the sacrifices they make. They never complain. They die in pain, in quiet, but at the same time, the next day they wake up, they go and make sure that they meet the commitments of the PSL fixtures. So to quantify, it will be difficult for me. The study has been undertaken at the moment in terms of the impact. As I indicated to you, that you need 200,000 minimum to comply to stage a fixture. All other things take into account the training, the camping, the flying, and all other things, all on a limited number of income streams that are given to us as football because of the situation that we find ourselves in. As I indicated before, we're in a puny business. But be as it may, the club chairmen are complying. Maybe with the passage of time, we're able to give a quantum, but accumulatively, how much we've lost. It's quite a sizable amount of money that we've lost. We've been losing money all along. It's worse now, and understandably so.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Tshepo, since you opened, I think you will then have the last question as we close.
Thanks. Chair, in terms of those who love to go to the stadiums with their kids, have you planned around the situation? Thanks.
The kids, everybody. Sorry. Whatever the law requires for age group to vaccinate, you must vaccinate. Unfortunately, as a kid, might not have an ID, but a kid is a kid. Therefore, when it comes in, there's other information that you can get in that certificate. But more importantly, kids are also supposed to be part of the criteria required to be in the stadium. It's only those that are not required to take vaccines that are exempt. Those that are required to take vaccine, they must be vaccinated also. Thank you. I know in schools there are other changes that have taken place in schools, but it's different with us here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you to all the members of the media for attending this press conference and also sending through your questions. That will be the end of the press conference. Good afternoon.